Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
Yakuza Like a Dragon
Yes.
came out on everything but the PS5, but I still played it on the PS5. I love Yakuza. It is one of my favorite series after Doug begrudgingly over and over again tried to convince me to play Yakuza.
If only could have done this with Souls as well, but yeah, I'll give you Yakuza.
Souls I tried. It's not good.
You did. You
Yakuza
gave it a good
I
college
tried.
shot.
And it's good. So it worked out differently. So Yakuza Like a Dragon is like the most fresh start the series has ever had. Zero kind of gave you a little bit better of an introduction into some of the classic Yakuza, but this is kind of the game that's like completely fresh start.
Yeah.
It's called Yakuza Like a Dragon. In Japan, it's Yakuza 7. It very much can be Yakuza 7. If you know about Yakuza, this very much is Yakuza 7. There are elements from the first 7 games and even a little bit of stuff I think that happened in Judgment. Sometimes I get mixed up which was which. That comes into this. But if you have no clue about any of this, you could totally go front to back. No issues at all.
Okay.
What's new about this game and why that's kind of the case is because Kiryu, who is the protagonist of everything Yakuza, is gone.
Yeah, just real quick on that. Like, how did you feel about that? Because you've been following Kiryu now for 6 games. You know, how did you feel just like the idea of like when you like boot up Yakuza 7 that like, okay, it's going to be a totally new guy. Like, how did you feel about that?
It was weird because that was very much my case. Was like, man, like, I'm sure this would just be better if it was Kiryu. By the end of this, Kasuga, I'm cool with it. He can be in every Yakuza game forever. He's fantastic. He's such a good character. It starts out almost as like a prequel for the first 2 chapters where you're actually back 18 years ago before the rest of this game when you are just like generic, low on the totem pole Yakuza guy. And basically those first 2, I kind of spent the time going like, man, I do not like playing as you.
Why was your impression like? Why didn't you like him? Like in that kind of first few bit.
The first kind of bit is very much just it's just very much he is generic Yakuza thug guy.
Okay, sure.
And like you're like, okay, yep. Oh, you know, I'll do anything for the boss, and the family needs this, and I'm going to do this, and you know what I mean? Just very much that like gangster mentality, and like I don't like Grand Theft Auto games. I hate playing as bad guys. Like,
sure.
And he very much just felt like dude completely. And he was, based on his story, kind of brought up in like this criminal underworld as like a Yakuza from, I think he goes into the family, I think it was 15 or 16 is when he's basically like adopted by the patriarch of this family, essentially.
Is he like a bad guy? Like to begin, like, do you play as because Yakuza games are kind of weird because it's about a crime, like the crimes all the time, but you play as like the golden child of like, he's just the nicest guy on the planet. Is he like, I'm sure later on he softens up a bit. In that like first few chapters though, is he like a hardline dude?
Oh no. Like, I mean, he's just generic.
Okay.
He's like, it's very much just like, you are just a Yakuza guy. Like that's just who you are. Like there is no other in that first 2 chapters. There is like no real personality to him. You kind of get the sense of like, okay, like you've had a rough life. Like we get it. Like you've got a little bit of personality, but it's just very much just like flat. Like the boss said, we're going here. Let's go.
Yeah.
The boss said we need to do this. Let's do it. Like that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But basically what happens is some bad things happen. And I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but again, because there's a time jump that almost serves as like a prologue. So you almost got to kind of talk about it. But basically what happens is he ends up going to jail basically to cover for a higher up in the family for 18 years. And basically it's like, you know what, I'll serve my time. I'll come out. And they're like, yep, we'll be right there waiting for you. Like, we got you, Kasuga. It'll be good. Like we know you're doing this for the family. It's all gonna be good. And then the day you get out, you walk out and do the like look around. And you're like, well, where the hell is everybody? Like,
oh, that sucks. That's interesting.
And then so you spend a little bit of time trying to like figure out like, okay, what the hell happened over the last 18 years? And then a whole lot's changed in terms of the Tojo clan, which you were part of, and how the Yakuza families are basically working in Kamurocho. Eventually kind of working your way up to go like, okay, I'm going to confront the patriarch of my family who's like, we'll take care of you when you get out. Some things happen and basically you end up just completely tossed in another city, no money, nothing.
Oh, cool.
You will literally wake up in a homeless camp and spend like the next like 4 or 5 hours as a homeless guy.
That's so interesting because like I think it's like from like a character of like Kiryu who's just like level-headed man. It's like it's kind of cool that he just gets so, I don't know.
And then even after that,
tricked.
like, yeah, No.
Okay. Sure.
Again, I'm trying to give like the most broad strokes I can without getting any spoilers here.
Sure. Yeah.
So, again, that is a very poor description of what happens, but I don't want to get into the specifics. But basically, so you still have that hard-headed, like, this just happened because, I know what's going on. I need to figure it out. Like, and that's kind of your main goal for the first little bit of the game is what the hell is happening? Yeah. So you basically go through as a homeless guy and you go do like odd jobs. You go to basically like a job center, like show up like, hey, can I get a job? Like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And as you're going through this, you're slowly kind of peeling away this like hard-nosed Yakuza person as you're just in like rock bottom of your life.
Oh, cool.
And like, so he basically becomes like, gets a job through this job agency and becomes super attached to the owner. And then some things happen with that kind of like slowly wraps him back into the Yakuza world. But basically at this point is where his personality comes through. And they made a lot of stuff about Dragon Quest.
Yeah, it's so weird.
And literally everything in this is compared to Dragon Quest, like straight-faced, like no joking, nothing. It's just like, that is what the hero in Dragon Quest would do. Let's go.
That's so weird to me because Sega doesn't even own Dragon Quest. I don't understand.
And then what's even crazier? So like again, I think it's about 4 hours into this, the game just goes batshit crazy. Like the first 4 hours are very like your JRPG battles that this new combat system has. You're just fighting Yakuza guy in suit, homeless guy who doesn't like you, Yakuza guy in suit, random street thug. Yeah, and basically like 4 hours in, you realize I've been put in rock bottom. Because that's where the heroes in Dragon Quest start. They always start at their lowest and rise to the level of becoming the hero. That is me. Yeah. And there's this really crazy scene where like everything switches and he just decides I'm the hero of Dragon Quest. And now every fight, you'll walk up to your random group of street thugs. But basically the way it's explained is he has now fully engrossed himself in this hero mentality. Yeah. That he's seeing things differently. So now you'll like do the JRPG pan and your characters while switching their cool job uniforms. The random Yakuza street thugs will randomly turn into like gigantic bodybuilders and like dudes with like crazy guns and all this kind of weird stuff that you would see in like a JRPG.
That's so cool because I just finished up Yakuza 6 and there was some interesting mechanics they were doing with like certain enemies, but it was still just guy in suit. So it was kind of like weird that like, oh, this guy's doing this kind of cool mechanic, but he's still just a guy in the suit. It just seems like the Yakuza 7's like, why don't you just make this guy a crazy dude sort of thing? So it kind of makes more sense why his abilities are kind of cool in these certain ways.
Exactly. And they kind of take like, and they play off like each character's thing. So like, you can get different jobs and every job has different things. So like, one of one of the couple female characters that you get in your party, like she can be an idol and all her attacks are based on her like singing into this imaginary microphone that obviously she doesn't have as soon as you leave battle. Or like you're one of the guys in your party for the whole game. The first one you get is a homeless dude from the homeless camp you wake up in. His power is like his breath stinks. So like he's just like, it's like he blows noxious fumes on the enemies. He just like literally just like opens his mouth and like burps on people and they get poisoned.
This weirdly sounds like the South Park JRPG, the RPG.
Yeah, there are like so many like things that you could very much tell like, okay, that's South Park. That's Yakuza 7, but it works because you have this larger than life character in Kasuga who is just fun and goofy and just is really just enjoying these people and the way that he interacts with everybody. You kind of get this sense of Kiryu has this too, where like as soon as he meets somebody, he's like, we're together forever, no questions. Like the homeless guy in your party, like literally he's like, you helped me when I was in the homeless camp, I got you for life, don't care what happens. Cool. Like it's Yakuza, so people are betraying people left and right, and he's just saying like, no. He's like, yeah, you betrayed me 3 times, but we're friends.
They're like, I hate your guts and I wish you were dead, but god damn it, I respect you. It's like every Yakuza's plotline.
Yeah, exactly. And in some of the other Yakuzas, that's why I was like, oh, really? But like everything about this is built around those first couple chapters, his dedication to that family. And then it becomes, okay, this is my dedication to my new family, or like your JRPG party. Like it's all based around your dedication to that quote unquote family. And then even like towards the end, the main villain kind of like just keeps going on and on about like, dude, you're so engrossed in this family mentality and this loyalty thing and you can't see past it. And just everything about Kasuga is so cool. And I am 100% down with him being the character for the next 7 Yakuza games.
That's so cool because actually I was playing as I was playing Yakuza. It was funny because I guess the one thing I do want to ask about like the battle system and stuff. Like I don't know like at what point we get into that. Um,
Whatever.
yeah, okay, sure, we can get to that now. The thing that's funny is like because I just wrapped up Yakuza 6. It's like I think when like Yakuza 7 was announced as like a JRPG, everyone's like, "What?" And you play Yakuza 6, it's like I see the through line sort of thing. So when you first like started booting up that sort of like JRPG system sort of thing, was that like a shock to your system because every Yakuza game before was action based, and you're like, man, why can't I just punch this guy? Why do I have to select attack? Or is it just like it's because it's weird because I think the game seems so similar to the other Yakuza games
Yep.
as far as like traveling and that sort of thing. So it just has this, but this one aspect is like completely different. So was that jarring? Did you like that? Just overall, I mean, not mechanically how it works. I'm just more curious how you felt about it.
I think initially it was very jarring because you were just fighting guys in suits.
Yeah.
So that first like 4 or 5 hour chunk where it's just like, oh, I'm just what's the point of this when I just as easily can like mash square a few times versus having to go select attack. But once it gets into that kind of that craziness element, it really just kind of it really just dives so deep into it that I don't know how you have this game without it. And you at no point pretty much past that point was like, man, I wish I could just hit square a few times, because I think especially since I've played, so many of these things, and the combat's so similar throughout. And yeah, they added different styles and that kind of thing. And your other protagonists play different than Kiryu, but with this one, it felt like, okay, you know what? I actually like this. It's actually kind of cool to go through a Yakuza game and not have these fights just be mash B, item, 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 mash B, or mash square, item, item, item.
Yeah, the whole finale of Yakuza 6 for me was just like pump up on health items and then hope I can block a few of this stuff.
and I think that's where I like the combat in Yakuza, but in my mind that was always one of the weakest parts, because I feel like so many of those boss battles, especially towards the end, end up with me going, well, I better go run down to the store, buy a bunch of health items before I go into this fight so I can die 6 times before
Let me tell you about the ending of Yakuza 6.
Yes, exactly. And this takes away all that, because now you've got, okay, I have my healer, I have I have all these JRPG roles, and they're doing that for you, and it becomes more of a part of your strategy more than just fight, item, fight.
So
item.
you're just thinking, you're like thinking way more during the battles.
Yeah, and again, I think Yakuza games before this very much had that button mashing mentality where like, okay, the street level fights, I can just smash a couple buttons and we're done. We're out of here, get my heat action and we're good. This actually does have that old school turn-based JRPG where it's like, okay, no, let me debuff, let me buff, let me poison this guy. There's a couple boss battles that like, I don't know if I didn't poison the dude, I don't know if I would have beat it. Like those kind of things where it's like, okay, I have to think through those steps.
No, that's cool. I mean, did you like it in terms of like other JRPG systems? Because you play a lot of JRPGs. Like, was it like? Now, I'm sure it's not top tier because it's like their first one, but it's kind of like their freshman shot kind of thing of like doing a JRPG battle system. Like, I don't want to compare it to like your favorite ones, but I mean, was it good? Was it interesting?
It's very basic, and I don't mean that in like in the negative way. I mean it in a very much like a. I think what you're saying is right, where it's kind of it's their first one. So let's settle this down to the basics here. You've got attack, magic, summons, items, and
let's make this thing work first.
And we're gonna make it work, and it feels good. There's never anything where you're like, oh man, that's something I've never seen before in a JRPG.
Sure. Okay.
It's very much like, okay, these work. We're gonna roll with them. We're gonna see what happens.
Okay.
But I do want to talk about the summons just really quick because they are crazy.
Summons in a Yakuza game is such a stupid idea.
No, it's such a great idea. It's so good. So basically the summons you get from doing side stories. So like you'll complete like one of the sub stories and it'll be like, oh, now you can summon or call because you dial them up on your phone is again the like how his imagination's working through. It says, oh, I made a phone call, so now you're here fighting for me. But like as you do sub stories, you get more. So like there's more of an incentive to actually do them. So like
that's such a good reward for sub stories. Holy crap.
One of the more generic ones is like you help out this like lady at a soup kitchen. And so like once you finish her sub story, she is now a summon. So you can summon the lady from the soup kitchen who comes up, cooks you a meal, and you get your HP and MP restored.
So I know you're Mr. I don't do sub stories. I'm going to do the mainline Yakuza games. You're not notorious. I'm the only person who knows this. But you like to
it's widespread.
You like to beeline it through a Yakuza game. So in this one, because of that sub story reward, were you kind of like, maybe I will check out the sub story?
I actually did more because it did something that, and I can't remember if the other ones don't. I don't remember them doing, but they just show up on your map now. Like, I feel like in a lot of the older
sure,
Yakuza
yeah.
games, you had to like almost hunt them down.
Yeah, you kind of like ran into them sometimes.
Exactly.
Kind of interesting.
Whereas this just puts a sub-story icon like on your map. So
Okay.
I almost naturally just did more because I'm like, oh, well, I'm right here. Let's see if this is an interesting one or a boring one. Because I think
Yeah.
those Yakuza ones fall into one of those two categories where it's either like, this is some weird thing where like one of them was like, go hunt down this dude's lost crayfish that you accidentally threw in the water. And then you have the one where it's like, oh man, I'm really thirsty after doing all this work. Could you get me some water?
Oh, sure.
So I think
The ones I hate are the ones that bury the lead with like a very boring intro, and then you like, oh, let's play this one. It's like, oh, it actually got crazy at the end, but like you don't know.
Yeah, and there was
Yeah.
one of these that like I just like accidentally did because I was just going through and just kind of clicking off some because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm right here. I'll just check out what these sub stories are that I accidentally did. And I was like, oh, did not expect this to end in a fun thing.
Yeah, that's I think that's kind of the good and the bad of like Yakuza stories. I do have a quick question though, because especially because you come from the series so much, it's like from what I understand, this is like not set in Kamurocho, and like
Nope.
I would say the thing that like if you're going to talk about Yakuza games, like your second sentence is going to be talking about the city. So were you? This is a new city. I mean, are you okay with that?
So you actually do go to Kamurocho and Sotenberry, which is the one from Zero where you played as Majima. So you actually go to both of those.
Sure.
You do visit them, but they're both very, very quick. The first, like the prologue part of the game, takes part in Kamurocho.
Yeah.
And I think you go back there once or twice. And then you
Yeah,
also go
sure.
to the... So you go there for like a minute or two a couple times. So they are there, but the new city, Yokohama, I don't like as much. And I think part of that is playing through all the Yakuza games. One of my favorite parts is every time you turn on a new Yakuza game is going and seeing how things changed.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
What
yeah.
does New Serena look like? What does Stardust look like now? What does the theater district have going on? Whereas when you go to a whole new city, you don't have that. You're just kind of running around seeing, okay, what's here? It's fun exploring, but it loses kind of that touch that Kamurocho had.
Is that just because it's the first, like you're saying, it's like the first time you visit it? Like, are you ready to like grow in the series with the city kind of thing?
So Kamurocho's small, right? You could
Yeah.
kind of run from corner to corner to Kamurocho in like 4 or 5 minutes.
Sure.
That might even be too long, right? But it's pretty quick to get across Kamurocho. This city's much bigger, and I think that hurts it.
Okay.
Because there are parts of this city, like, I didn't even bump into like the batting cage place until like chapter 11. And it was because there was like...
So sorry. Batting cage is really fun.
But it was because there was an interesting side story that kind of led me to that part of town. And thinking it through, at no point does the main story really take you to that part of town. Because the town's so big, where I feel like in Kamurocho, because everything's so small, you either directly or indirectly walk through each part of that city.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, that's interesting. So that can be like a positive, negative. I mean, it's interesting because it seems like there's more stuff you can then therefore explore off the beaten path, but you can like miss this stuff. You can inadvertently miss stuff, or like you don't get to see the cooler aspects because the main story doesn't take you necessarily near those areas.
Yeah, and again, it has about the same amount of stuff to do in terms of mini games and side stuff like that Kamurocho does, but because it's spread out, it doesn't have that dense feeling that Kamurocho does, where you're like, okay, this is like a huge inner city where like I can take 10 steps and there's something new for me to do. This one's much more like, oh yeah, the movie theater's on the other corner, my hideout's over here. You very much feel the distance between things. And actually in this one, and it's something that's in all of the Yakuzas, they have the taxis that take you to the different parts of towns.
Yeah.
0 through 6, I very rarely feel like I use those unless it's like, it's in the other corner. Like, I guess I'll do it. Especially late game where you kind of start bouncing around and you have access to all the parts of the city. I use the taxis like nobody's business. Like, you almost lose part of that getting to know the city because the size of it, you're almost incentivized to use the taxi system.
Oh, that's interesting. That's kind of a bummer. I mean, personality. I mean, Kamurocho has like this kind of like very cool. I think the thing I really really love about the series is that it feels like you're very much transported to this place and you're kind of like learning it. There's all these like really cool, interesting little unique bits and pieces of Kamurocho. But is it because it's dense? Is it because it's not dense? Does it have that detail density as Kamurocho or no?
Yes, it does. And there's like there's still cool parts. And again, a lot of this game, I didn't even really talk too much about the overarching story because I don't want to get into spoilers too much, and it's hard to even begin describing without getting into spoilers.
Sure. Yeah.
But basically, there's these three different Yakuza groups, or Chinese mafia. I can never remember which one's like mob, mafia, Yakuza. But anyway,
Yeah.
there's basically these 3 power groups that control the city. So each one kind of has their own like little distinct things that they do. Like one's kind of basically just there for surveillance. So they have kind of this weird like hidden area that's like in the back alleys where their main hideout is. But then again, you've got like cool spots. There's a river that runs through the town, so you can go over these bridges. There's a cool waterfront area where like the Mario Kart minigame is, which again feels like Mario Kart. It's surprisingly well done.
Does it have drifting or no? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
But it's like it's not like the like jump and drift. It's just like hold button to drift.
That still to me is it's like a good sign. Like I feel like a bad cheapo kart thing is like no drifting, but if there's drifting, like
now you're making me double check it because I did that a lot early on and then I didn't go back to it. But anyway, so now I'm double checking. Now I'm rethinking that. But anyway,
sure, that's fine.
It does have interesting parts, and again, I think it's one of those things where come Yakuza Like a Dragon 3, it will have that Kamurocho flavor where you're like, oh yeah, we can go to the waterfront, we can check this out. And I think that again, especially if you've played through the other Yakuza games, you just, like you said, Kamurocho is just so ingrained into what Yakuza has been that I think it almost contributes more to it being that fresh start of like, you don't need the old ones. This is a new city. You don't need the history of why Millennium Tower is important. You don't need that history. You don't need to know how Kamurocho Hills was developed and how there's this weird side story that goes around with how Kamurocho Hills develops over the game. So I think that just contributes like Kasuga, battle system, new city. I think all kind of give this more inviting place for Yakuza.
How do you feel about just overall and like I guess kind of like wrapping up a little bit, like how do you feel about just in the realm of the Yakuza games, like how were this one? I'm not asking you to rank them necessarily, but just like, is this like one of your favorite ones?
Yes.
Is this like it's not a great Yakuza game, or is it just so different that it's kind of hard to?
It would be up there with the best ones.
Okay.
No question. It's so different and fun, and I think it's one of those things where a lot of series would just keep going and just hammering home the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And this one very much feels like, nope, you know what? Let's take a breather. We're still going to honor the things that are there. We're still going to have what was going on with the Tojo clan's going to play in this. You do still see some of the old Yakuza characters as trailers spoiled many times. So they do show up. But again, even when those old things show up, because Kasugo's in prison, they use that kind of as your intro point because basically the last 18 years is when the majority...
You don't know any of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. So like those guys show up and they're just like, oh, and he's like, who the hell are you? And it like blank of the main characters from all the other Yakuza games. Let's go like, the hell do you mean? Who am I? I'm Captain Blank of the Blank family. Like,
oh sure, yeah.
What do you mean you don't know me? Or like another character, he'll be like, come on, let's go. And he's like, are you really gonna fight? Blah blah blah.
Oh, that's fun.
and he's like, I got this. Don't worry about it. And you're like, no, what?
That's very funny.
So there's some really cool intros for the old characters
so they kind of like contextualize the fact that you may not have played the other ones as well.
Yes, and again, those characters, for those of us who do have that knowledge, instantly have some like cool like hints at like, oh yeah, like this, and even the way the other characters introduce them and the way they introduce themselves, you're like, oh, I get what he's referencing right now.
Sure.
It very much feels like for the old games that they're almost serve as more like reference points for those of us who played it more than like key plot points.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Here's a fun nod, not you need to know who Kiryu is or you're screwed.
Sure.
But
that's cool.
It's so fantastic. Everybody should play it.
It's like it sounds like the Resident Evil 7 of the Yakuza series or something.
A little bit, because it does do that same thing where it's like, okay, we've done over the top action for so long, we're gonna throw you in first person, we're gonna make it really survival horror, and this is going, okay, we've done all these things, we're gonna make it turn based, we're gonna get rid of everything you know, but still kind of honor those and still tie those in a little bit.
Cool.
But anyway, go play Yakuza 0 through 7. We are Workforce.
Ask.
It's only like what 7 times 12?
Hop around a bit.
100 plus. It's only a couple 150 hours.
Sure.
Anyway, we are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to us wherever you're listening, and we will see you later.
Bye.